The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the CEO of New Zealand Property Buyers, helping 100 plus clients invest smarter and scaled 160 plus doors all under 5 years. None other than Mr. Hadley Nightingale.
Afternoon, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Mr. Hadley on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, not a problem. So to give you the quick story of the longer version, so started New Zealand Property Buyers sort of 7 years ago. I've been in the industry, or bought my first property back in 2007, just before the last property boom, or the one prior. Learnt my lessons the hard way through that with getting carried away with the market, which sent me to Australia for a number of years to go and work in the mining industry and drive road trains and do all the things that I needed to do to increase my salary, because the place that I brought wasn't fantastic. And then that brought me through to 2016, went and found someone and read a whole lot of books on how I could better execute on what I'd previously not done so well. And then from there started our property investment company back in 2020, or the heart of COVID. Just happened to decide I was going to leave one thing, start another. COVID happened, and then from that we've sort of ground through that and come out the other side to where we are now.
Mr. Hadley Nightingale, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And today let's talk about what to look for when buying a property. You spent 8 years working in Australia, agricultural, transport, and mining industry before returning to New Zealand and discovering your passion for property. When you made that transition, what was the biggest mindset shift required? Not just learning a new skills, but unlearning the way you had been taught to think about money and work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing was growing up was that my parents were hardworking people, and their idea behind everything was, if you're going to make more money, the only way that you can do that is to work harder and go and work more hours. So at the time, that was what I was focused on, right? Because that's all they ever taught us was you go and get a job and you work hard and you carry on working hard, and one day you'll make some more money. And from a mind set perspective was that was the route that I was going down. As I said before, I brought a property, but pretty quickly realized the only way that I was going to pay for that was to carry on trying to work more hours. But there's only so many hours you can work in a day. And that's where the mindset side of things had to shift for me, was from moving away from how do I work more hours in a day to how do I buy some of my time back and compound that wealth or that growth, looking at things as to how do we grow things rather than how do we work for an hourly rate, I suppose, is the quick way to put it.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Hadley. You've shared that attending a Robert Kiyosaki event was a turning point that brought you back to real estate. For someone listening who knows they should invest but keeps finding reason to wait, what shifted inside you at that event? Was it information, or was something else, or permission, or belief identity?
Yeah, so on the Robert Kiyosaki thing, I'd been reading his Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I think by the time I went to the event, I'd already listened to the book, and read it 3 or 4 times. So I had a pretty good idea around the mindset side of things. But really, what that event did was give me access to people that were then going to show me how to do things, as opposed to tell me all the reasons why I couldn't. And I think that's really the key aspect with it, is getting yourself surrounded by people that can show you how to do things, rather than the general crowd that'll tell you all the reasons why you can't. Uh, and so with that event was just sort of the catalyst to get things moving, get things pushed ahead. And at the end of the day, knowledge is everywhere, but it's the execution side of things I think people generally tend to struggle with. And that's the roadblock for them, is how you can sit there and you can look at all the information that's out there, but then how do you actually put an executable plan in place to go and action what you need to do?
Indeed, Mr. Hadley, you talk about leaving the drama triangle to show up and to work. For the first timer buyer, overwhelmed by conflicting advice, terrifying headlines, and analysis of paralysis, what does it actually look like to step out the drama into the action? What is the first move?
Yeah, I think it's, just to reiterate what I was saying before, is about getting clarity from people that can tell you how to do things, because there's so many people in the world that will tell you all the reasons why something won't work, all the reasons why you shouldn't do something, the reasons that you can't do it, the issues that they had while they were attempting to do it, and so therefore try and put you off. But when you look at the broader context of the world, there's always someone out there that's executing on the thing that you want to do. And it's about trying to get as a proximity and as close to them as you possibly can. And I think the other thing that you find as you go through life is that the people that haven't achieved what you're looking to achieve, or the people at the same level or below you, will generally tend to try and pull you down and criticize you for trying to do things. And people that are ahead of you in life generally tend to be the ones that encourage you to get there. Um, and the ones that tend to be the most critical are your family. And I think that's because they love you and they care for you, and they want to see you protected and safe. And as soon as you step outside of the bounds of your own family and what your own family's done, then they almost feel a little bit insecure for you. So the defense mechanisms come up to say, hey, look, I don't think that's a great idea. You shouldn't do it. My cousin's friend had an instance where they went and did this and it didn't work for them, so it definitely won't work for you. So it's really important as to who you're going to take your advice from, and making sure it's from people that have actually done what you're looking to achieve, rather than just anyone off the street.
Very well said. Mr. Hadley, you build your business around being buyers agent through NZ Property Buyers Ltd. What is the biggest misconception that people have about what buyers agents actually does, and when should someone consider using one versus going it alone?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing, Daniel. It people go out there and they do it alone, and it's one of the biggest purchases that they're going to make in their life. And it's really interesting that if there's like a tax question, people are quite happy to go to an accountant. If there's a legal question, they're quite happy to go to a lawyer. But as soon as it comes to property, they're quite happy to go and take advice, like we were saying before, from family or from your uncle at a barbecue, or something like that, to go, hey, look, now's a good time to buy property. Now's not a good time to buy property. And the only time that these people have purchased themselves is the house that they bought 30 years ago. The house they give you advice from the house that they missed out on 20 years ago. And so it's their own stuff that they push out onto you. And as I said before, not from a place of harm, but a place of love to try and keep you safe. But the issue with that being is that they're not up to scratch with where the market is, with what's happening on a day-to-day basis. they don't negotiate with people every day. Even if they negotiate in terms of like a sales role in their job, it still doesn't directly translate across to real estate and what's happening in the market. And the other thing with that too is that people tend to get emotionally charged as the market changes. So when the market is dead and flat, everyone says, hey, look, it's not worth investing in real estate at the moment. The market's gone down. My neighbor lost some money in the market. Then over time, and as the market increases, then the news headlines start saying prices are on the increase. Well, those same people that were telling you not to buy are now telling you to get in and buy everything you possibly can, because there's never going to be another time like there is at the moment. Then the market pulls back, and the same people then say to you, hey, we bought at the top of the market, property has lost 10%, property doesn't work. And it seems to happen time and time again, as opposed to talking to people that are in the market every day. They can say to you, hey, look, we're at a place in the market now where this is happening. These are the strategies that are working at the moment. We're in a down market. This is what we do in a down market to make you money. This is what we do in a rising market to make you money. We need to be cautious at this part of the market because we're starting to get a little bit overextended. And it's really there to keep you safe and to reduce that complexity and risk that are in the deals, to try and get you, the best possible outcome that we possibly can with the best advice that we can give you at the same time. There's the old saying that knowledge is free, and that execution is what people pay for. And so that's really where things come in. You can sit on YouTube and read all the books in the world, but it really comes down to that execution piece, where, is where the needle moves.
Interesting, Mr. Hadley. You stated clearly that you focus on cash flow, not growth or growth. In a market where most people are chasing capital gains and telling stories about doubling their money in 5 years, why do you deliberately swim the other direction? What's wrong with your growth narrative?
So the growth still needs to happen. There needs to be an element of that, but at the same time, there needs to be cash flow within the properties. I mean, at any stage of growing a portfolio, you're either going to have too much equity or too much serviceability, and so it's about balancing those two things out. So you have an amount of equity, and then you've got to try and catch up to that point with your serviceability, and then they'll balance each other out, and then one will become ahead of the other. But at the end of the day, there's a saying that you can't eat bricks. So the cash flow there, whether it being neutral or slightly positive, gives you food on the table, for lack of a better term. Whereas the sole growth orientated plan, if the market drops by 20%, you've got nothing. As opposed to the cash flow side of things, where if values go up and cash flow goes up at the same time, great. If your cash flow is still there and the property drops 10 or 15%, you don't have to sell it. As opposed to the capital growth guys that are still putting in the same amount of money every week, and then hoping that the market's going to go back up so they can catch up some of their losses just sheerly from that market fluctuation.
Very well said, Mr. Hadley. You've shared strategies for finding high-yielding properties, even in a high-interest environment, across multiple podcast appearances. Walk us through what you're actually looking for when you analyze a potential deal. What is the first number you calculate, and what tells you this one worth pursuing?
Yeah, I think in terms of calculating those numbers, and the first thing that we want to look at is basically our gross yield gives us a really good base indication of where things sort of sit in relation to interest rates. So it's gross yield. Then we want to work out roughly what our monthly operating expenses are. And then what we want to look for is what our interest rates and our cash flow is going to be at the end of the day. So high level from a gross yielding perspective. So, for example, if we said 7% is the base of where we need to look, then we need to look into the weeds a little bit more around what are those actual operating costs going to be. And then from there, what's the actual cash flow of it by the time we take into account interest rates and things like that. So I mean, the other, it's something that a lot of people ask questions about, and they're not quite sure about what those steps are for the analysis of it. But yeah, I've got a checklist that I can share with your listeners if that's helpful, Daniel. And they just send me a message on Instagram, which is at Hadley Nightingale, and just DM me Daniel, and I'll get the checklist across to exactly what that looks like and the process that we run through.
Certainly, Mr. Hadley, you've described turning moldy house into rent by room gold mine. That's a specific value add strategy for investor who's only ever considered standard residential rentals. How do you identify properties? What kind of a hidden potential? What were you seeing in the moldy house that everyone else missed?
Yeah, I think it comes down to cosmetics is a big part of it. So generally what tends to happen is people tend to look at properties from the perspective of would I live in this house? I just had a conversation with some people last week about a particular property that we were showing them, and they said to me, hey, look, we wouldn't buy this place, or I'm not too keen to buy this place because there's two houses that are too close together. And we just had to have a conversation to say, well, look, that's in terms of you and where you live and your current situation at the moment. But it's not the case for a lot of people. People aren't going to be, or renters aren't necessarily going to be put off by that. That's you. And so this is part of the, I suppose, the process that people need to go through when they're looking to purchase property, is that you've got to take yourself out of it. It's not a case of, would I live myself in this particular property, in this particular neighborhood, in this particular area? It's got to be a case of, does this work from a renting perspective? And that just because you wouldn't want to live in a particular part of town doesn't mean that other people don't want to. You go to anywhere in a particular town or neighborhood, town or city, and there's going to be people that live in every area. But just as I say, because you don't want to live there personally doesn't mean that other people don't want to. And the other thing that we see a lot too is that people say, oh, I spoke to my friend, and my friend said that that's a bad part of town, so therefore we don't want to buy there. But their friend hasn't. They've lived there, or they lived there 10 years ago, but they haven't actually bought any property themselves, and there's still that real emotional component to it, as opposed to sticking with a bit more logic and looking at what our growth opportunities and cash flow opportunities are.
That's amazing. Amazing, Mr. Hadley. As a CEO of New Zealand Property Buyers, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Short-term and long-term tend to be the same thing, just to do the best that we possibly can for our clients. And I'm a firm believer, as Zig Ziglar says, when you help enough people get what they want, you'll have everything that you want. And that's really the key thing for us, is to have a really good business that supports our clients now. And then as we grow that into the long term, the more people that we help, the further ahead that we get as well. So it's about that constant growth, growing the business, growing us, growing our team. And that's from a numbers perspective, but also too, it's really important that we have that personal growth within our team as well. And they're upskilling, they're learning new skills, they're purchasing property and doing the things that the company was founded on. Really important for the short and the long term.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Hadley, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
You've just got to get started is really the key thing. Getting started is really key. And then also too, as I said before, finding people that are going to tell you how to do things rather than giving you all the reasons why you can't. And that's going to be the thing that separates people from doing stuff than the ones that don't. So I suppose that's probably the condensed version of that one. And just when you reach your fear point, you just need to take another step, because as you reach that point and you take a bigger step, your ability to take risks increase, or understand risks increase. but also too your own internal growth grows as well at the same time. So it's at that point where you expand. But if you keep hitting the same fear ceiling and you don't move through and past that, then you don't end up going anywhere.
Hmm. Well, thank you for that empowering advice, Mr. Hadley. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, I think the biggest one's Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So as I said, I've listened to that and read that book now probably 10 times. And every time you read it, or every time I read it, something else pops up in there that I sort of didn't understand previously. And then just the different takes and the different angles on things that, you read it once when your mindset is at one point, and then you go back through and you read it a little bit further along the journey, and different analogies and different spaces then sort of pique your interest and teach you different things. So that would probably be the fundamental book that that sort of put me on the path and the journey that we're on now.
Well, thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Hadley. You provided advice for people looking buy properties right now in a various economic moments. If you were advising the first time buyer today in this current market, what is the single most important piece of counsel you'd give them that would differ from what you have said 5 years ago?
Location's really important. So when a market's going up, it doesn't matter to a degree where you buy. There's an old saying that says any fool can make money in a rising market, and that's where people get themselves caught, as I did back in 2007, thinking, hey, look, prices are going up. Let's it doesn't matter where we buy as long as we buy something. But it's really important to, when you're purchasing, and especially when you're in a flatter market or a declining market and you're purchasing, to buy somewhere where there's some demand. You're not buying in the bottom 20% of a suburb, and you're not buying in the top 20% either. You want to be as close to the median as what you can, so that if you did have to sell that particular property, then you've got an exit for it. The other thing is too is that property needs to be boring, and as soon as it turns into something that's super exciting or is really, really sexy, then it generally tends to cost you more and take you longer than what you expect it to. So good suburbs, as close to the median price as you possibly can, in a good location that's close to amenities, always helps. As soon as we start chasing shiny objects off in small towns that have got no industry backing them, fine in a rising market until the market pulls back, and then it's a case of who's going to buy your property after that.
Very well said, Mr. Hadley. And before we wrap up the discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in 6th season, abstract poetry in 3rd season, of course, my book 101 review in 6th season 2, a comedy 101 in its 4th season, and of course, my food 101 in 6th season as well, geography 101, love letters, movie 101, review, music 101, our 5th season, science 101, sex 101 in its 4th season. Of course, my baby podcast, Trivia 101, Motivation 101, Spiritual Awakening 101, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and Coaching 101, as well as my Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Hadley, finally, you said there are buying opportunities, but the economy remains uncertain. For the investor who wants to be ready when the right deal appears, who wants to have a cash available, knowledge prepared, and nerve steady, what should they be doing in the waiting? Are they prepared for opportunity you can't yet see?
I think it comes down to just that learning and the growth side of things. So if you've got your cash ready and you're talking to the right people around your mortgage brokers and things like that to make sure that you've got the lending available, but then just getting familiar with your local market or where you're looking to purchase is the key thing. The more knowledge that you have on there, the more insight that you have as to what your local market's doing or the area that you're looking to buy is going to give you some better depth rather than just deciding that you're going to go out and hope to land something just if something falls into your lap.
Very well said, Mr. Hadley. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so NewZealandPropertyBuyers.com is our website, and then at Hadley Nightingale on Instagram is the other place to reach out to us. It'd be great to have some conversations.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Hadley Nightingale, because if you support him, for sure more and more empowering properties will rise. So I have one more question, Mr. Hadley. You've discussed the removal of a loan to value restrictions and predicted there would be no more expected property boom. You were right. What were you seeing that the optimists miss? And what's your framework for filtering market hype from the market reality?
Yeah, so I think that the key thing to look at is really supply and demand. And then everything in property tends to be about a 10-year cycle. And I suppose it's the same with the stock market as well, is that you get yourself to a point where everyone gets drunk on property, and then there's always going to be a hangover at some point. And we'd been going for 12 years. They tried to put loan-to-value ratios in place, or higher loan-to-value ratios in place, to stop the market. The market carried on going, and then there was always going to be some event that slowed the market, pulled it back. And it happened in 2007, 2008. It's happened in 2022. We've sat flat for a few years. Inflation's starting to creep up a little bit as well. And so as inflation starts to move again, we'll also have asset inflation, because they're pretty closely correlated. And then also too, as governments start to print money, then that's also going to start to drive prices up again. So there'll be a boom when the newspaper headlines start telling everyone that real estate started to move again, but they generally tend to be 6 to 12 months behind the reality of the market.
I have one more question, Mr. Hadley, before I will let you go. You've been investing through multiple regimes: low interest rates, high interest rates, pandemic disruptions, regulatory changes. What is the most important lesson you've learned about how strategy must adapt to environment? What worked in 2020 that would not destroy you in 2026?
As I said, in 2020, you could just go and buy anything and you were going to make money from an equity perspective, because the market was just rocketing ahead. And I think the important piece with this is looking ahead at this over a 15-year period. So property is a long game; it's not a short game, and that having that view of to buy something now and then we're going to sell it, or we're going to keep it for the next 15, 20 years is really important. But the other thing is that boring property boring investments tend not to get you in trouble. It's the sexy ones that appear to be sexy that are the ones that generally tend to have some hidden issues with them, and they generally tend to cost you more and take longer than you expect. So 2020, as I say, you could almost go and buy anything, but low interest rates were there at like 2%. And the other thing is, people got carried away with that and thought interest rates would never rise again. But they were caught out with that, as opposed to now where we're at that sort of 4.5% to 5.5% range, is back closer to normal. And it's a case of, well, if interest rates go up again, how are we hedging our bets if they go up? And have we got enough surplus in there to carry that? Or if they go down, it's just additional cream on top for us.
Mr. Hadley Nightingale, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.